Bumpy Johnson carried a straight razor, not a gun. People asked him why. Why not carry a .45 like every other gangster in New York? Why rely on a barber's tool when you could have firepower? Bumpy would smile and say, "Guns are loud. Guns bring police. A razor is personal." On April 22, 1938, at exactly 10:32 p.m., Anthony "Tony the Snake" Marino learned what personal meant. Duke Ellington was in the middle of Take the A-Train at the Apollo Theater when whiskey exploded across the stage. Tony Marino, a capo in Vito Genovese's organization, had just thrown a full glass of bourbon at Harlem's greatest musician like he was aiming at a dartboard. The music stopped. 300 people froze, and Bumpy Johnson's hand moved to his waistband. Not for a gun, for the razor. In that moment, everyone in the Apollo knew Tony Marino had just signed his own death warrant. The Apollo Theater was the crown jewel of Harlem, not the whites-only cotton club where black performers entertained white audiences. The Apollo was different. It was integrated. Black and white sat in the same seats, shared the same air, existed in a rare bubble of equality that didn't exist anywhere else in 1938 America. The home of legends, they called it. A massive theater on 125th Street between Frederick Douglass Boulevard and Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. 2 balconies, a polished stage that had held 5,000 spectators. And tonight, Duke Ellington's orchestra was making that theater shake. Bumpy Johnson wasn't there to watch the show. He stood against the back wall, watching, always watching. At 33 years old, Bumpy had already earned his reputation as Harlem's protector, not through loudness or flash, but through calculated violence and unwavering principle. The neighborhood's numbers rackets, its speakeasies, its performers, its hustlers, they all moved under Bumpy's protection. Not because he demanded it, because they chose it. He was dressed in his signature style, charcoal 3-piece suit, tailored to perfection, white shirt, black tie, patent leather shoes, a straight razor in a custom sheath inside his waistband, 7 inches of Sheffield steel, honed to an edge that could split a hair. Beside him stood Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen, elegant in an emerald dress, and Samuel Big Sam Jackson, Bumpy's enforcer, a mountain of a man who'd earned his reputation breaking bones. At a table near the stage sat Anthony "Tony the Snake" Marino, with 7 of his guys, all Italian, all armed, all drunk. They'd been making noise all night. Racist comments delivered just loud enough to be heard. Laughter at the black dancers, crude remarks about the women. Bumpy had been watching them, waiting. Then Duke hit the climax of his song. Fingers flying across the piano keys, the horns building, the crowd mesmerized, and Tony Marino grabbed his whiskey glass. He stood up, aimed and threw it directly at Duke Ellington. The glass hit Duke mid-note. Bourbon splashed onto his tuxedo, soaked the piano, got in his face, his eyes. The orchestra faltered. The music died. Duke stood there dripping, his face frozen in that careful neutrality black performers had learned to wear when white men humiliated them. Tony laughed, loud, cruel. "Play faster, boy. Earn that paycheck." The Apollo went silent, not the comfortable silence of a pause between songs, the suffocating silence of 300 people holding their breath, knowing something terrible was about to happen. And Bumpy Johnson pushed off the wall and started walking. His footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Click, click, click. Patent leather on wood. People moved aside without being asked. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Bumpy's right hand rested on his waistband. Casual, deliberate. Everyone in that room who knew him recognized the gesture. Not a gun, the razor. Tony was still laughing when Bumpy reached his table. The laughter died when he looked up and saw Bumpy's face. No anger, no rage, just empty, cold calculation. The expression of a man deciding exactly how much pain to inflict. "Stand up, Tony," Bumpy said quietly. It wasn't a request. Tony tried to grin, tried to play tough. "What's your problem, boy?" The word boy echoed through the Apollo like a gunshot. Bumpy didn't blink. His hand moved to his jacket slowly, deliberately, and he pulled out the razor, still in its sheath, just held it in his palm, the dark leather stark against his skin. "I said stand up." This time Tony stood. His 7 guys reached for their weapons. "Tell your boys," Bumpy said, his voice cutting through the room like the blade he carried. "If they clear leather, they won't live long enough to regret it." The 7 men froze, because everyone in Harlem knew the stories. 4 enforcers who tried collecting Genovese's tribute last month, found in an alley with their throats opened. A numbers runner who'd betrayed Stephanie to the Italians, discovered with his tongue cut out. A dirty cop who'd taken mob money to hassle Harlem businesses, fished out of the East River with traitor carved into his chest. Bumpy Johnson didn't make threats. He made promises, and he always kept them. Bumpy stepped closer to Tony, close enough that Tony could smell the bergamot cologne, close enough to see the absolute emptiness in Bumpy's eyes. "You threw whiskey at Duke Ellington," Bumpy said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying to every corner of the theater. "During his performance in Harlem, you want to explain to me why you thought that was acceptable?" Tony tried to rally. "Look, it was just a joke." "A joke?" Bumpy's thumb traced the edge of the razor sheath. "Let me tell you a joke, Tony. Last month, 4 of Genovese's boys walked into a Harlem barbershop thinking they could shake down the owner. You know what's funny? We're still finding pieces." The color drained from Tony's face. "See, that's what happens when people forget where they are." Bumpy pulled the razor from its sheath. The blade caught the light. 7 inches of gleaming steel. "You're not in Little Italy. You're not in the Bronx. You're in Harlem. And in Harlem, we have rules." He held the razor up, letting everyone see it. "Rule number 1, you respect the people. Rule number 2, you respect the music. Rule number 3, the blade glinted as he turned it slowly, you don't humiliate Duke Ellington and expect to walk out of here with the same face you walked in with." Tony's hands were shaking now. "I'm connected. I'm with Vito Genovese." Vito Genovese. Bumpy's laugh was cold. "You think that name scares me? Vito Genovese doesn't own Harlem. Lucky Luciano doesn't own Harlem. You want to know who owns Harlem?" He stepped even closer, the razor between them. "We do. Every person in this theater, every musician on that stage, every dancer in this building. This is our kingdom, and I'm the man they trust to protect it." Tony was sweating now. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something," Bumpy said softly. "You came into the Apollo thinking you could do whatever you wanted, because you're Italian, because you're connected, because you have a gun and 7 guys backing you, but you made one mistake." He let the silence hang for 3 seconds. "You forgot that a razor is personal." The blade moved. Not threatening, just a casual adjustment, but Tony flinched like Bumpy had stabbed him. "So here's what's going to happen," Bumpy continued. "I'm going to give you 2 choices. Choice 1, you apologize to Duke Ellington, loud, clear, in front of everyone. Then you walk out of the Apollo, you leave Harlem, and you tell Vito Genovese that this neighborhood is permanently closed to Italian business." Tony's voice cracked. "And choice 2, Bumpy smiled, the kind of smile that made men empty their bowels. "Choice 2 is, I open this razor and show you why they call me the King of Harlem." And Tony, he leaned in until their faces were inches apart. "I'm really hoping you pick choice 2. The silence was absolute. 300 people watching, waiting. The only sound was Tony Marino's ragged breathing. "Because you see," Bumpy continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "guns are impersonal. You pull a trigger, man drops. Clean, simple. But a razor," he turned the blade slowly, catching the light, "a razor requires commitment. You have to get close. You have to look a man in the eyes while you open him up. You have to hear him beg. You have to smell his fear." He paused. "And I've gotten very good at it." Tony's knees buckled slightly. One of his guys moved to support him. "So what's it going to be, Tony? An apology or a demonstration?" Tony's voice came out as a croak. I'll apologize." Louder. "I don't think Duke heard you." Tony turned toward the stage where Duke still stood frozen, watching this surreal confrontation unfold. "I apologize." Tony's voice cracked. "Mr. Ellington, I apologize. It was disrespectful. It was wrong." "Look at him when you apologize," Bumpy commanded. "Show him the respect you should have shown from the beginning." Tony met Duke's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ellington. Truly, it won't happen again." Bumpy turned to Duke. "You accept his apology?" Duke Ellington, the most dignified man in Harlem, a genius who'd spent his life navigating white America's disrespect with grace, looked at Bumpy Johnson defending him with a razor, and tears filled his eyes. "Yeah, Bumpy, I accept." Bumpy nodded, then turned back to Tony. The razor was still in his hand, still open. "Good. Now here's what happens next. You and your boys are going to walk out of the Apollo, slowly, calmly, like men who just learned a valuable lesson about geography and respect." He stepped even closer. "But Tony, if I ever hear your name in Harlem again, if you ever set foot north of a 110th Street, if you even think about this neighborhood, I won't give you choices. I'll just open this razor and paint the streets with you. And when Vito Genovese asks what happened, I'll send him your tongue in a box with a note that says Harlem ain't for sale." Bumpy closed the razor with a soft click. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "We clear?" Tony nodded frantically. "Crystal clear." "Then get the hell out of my sight." Tony and his crew didn't run. But it was close. They walked out of the Apollo like men leaving their own funeral. The moment they were gone, the tension broke. Someone started clapping, then another. Then the entire theater erupted in applause. Bumpy turned to Duke. "From the top, Duke. Let's give these people what they came for." Duke sat back at the piano. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from emotion. He looked at Bumpy and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Bumpy nodded once, then walked back to his spot against the wall. Duke began to play, but this time the music was different. More powerful, more defiant, because Duke Ellington wasn't just playing notes anymore. He was playing freedom. He was playing dignity. He was playing the sound of a man who'd been defended when he couldn't defend himself. The Apollo erupted. Not just applause, celebration, because everyone in that room understood what had just happened. Bumpy Johnson had drawn a line in the sand. He'd told the Italian mob, told Vito Genovese, told every white gangster who thought they could take Harlem, "This neighborhood belongs to us, our music, our culture, our dignity, and we'll kill to protect it." Stephanie St. Clair walked over to Bumpy and touched his arm gently. "You enjoyed that," she said with a knowing smile. "I enjoyed watching him piss himself. But more than that, I enjoyed reminding everyone, including us, that we don't have to accept disrespect just because powerful men expect us to. They'll retaliate. Genovese won't let this go." Bumpy's hand rested on the razor in his waistband. "Let him come. I'll be waiting." Anthony "Tony the Snake" Marino left New York the next morning. Word spread through Vito Genovese's organization within hours. Harlem was off limits. Permanently. Genovese tried to push back, sent more enforcers. 2 weeks later they were found in the Harlem River with razors embedded in their chests and a note pinned to one body. Postage paid. Return to sender. Within 3 months the Italian mob had withdrawn from Harlem completely, not because they were weak, because Bumpy Johnson had taught them a lesson economics couldn't. Some territories cost more than they're worth, and Harlem would cost them everything. The Apollo incident became legend. The night Bumpy Johnson faced down a made man, with nothing but a razor and absolute conviction. The night he established himself not just as a gangster, but as Harlem's protector. Years later, when Bumpy was in Alcatraz, serving time for conspiracy, Duke Ellington came to visit. They sat across from each other in the visiting room, the musician and the gangster, separated by a table and a lifetime of choices. "Why'd you do it?" Duke asked. "You could have let it go, could have avoided all of this." He gestured at the prison around them. Bumpy smiled. "Duke, you know what the difference is between a gangster and a king." Duke shook his head. "A gangster takes, a king protects. That night at the Apollo, I wasn't defending you, I was defending what you represent. Black excellence, that doesn't apologize, doesn't bow, doesn't accept disrespect, just because white men expect it." He leaned forward. "You think I regret it?" That razor opened Tony Marino's eyes that night. Opened a lot of eyes. Showed Harlem that we don't have to accept their terms, that we can fight back, that dignity is worth dying for. Duke's eyes filled with tears. "You know what you gave me that night? You gave me pride. For the first time in my career, I wasn't performing despite being black. I was performing because I'm black, because we're excellent, because we matter. You always mattered, Duke. I know that now, because you showed me." April 22, 1938. The Apollo Theater. The night a straight razor defended more than one man's dignity. The night Bumpy Johnson became the undisputed protector of Harlem. The night the Italian mob learned that some kingdoms can't be conquered. The razor Bumpy carried that night stayed with him for the rest of his life. Through prison sentences, through wars with other gangsters, through decades of protecting Harlem streets. And when Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, that razor was found in his pocket. Still sharp, still ready, still carrying the message he'd sent that April night. You can own Manhattan, you can own the Bronx, but Harlem protects its own. And anyone who forgets that lesson learns it the hard way. One razor cut at a time. If this story of courage, dignity, and street justice moved you, hit that subscribe button and smash that like. Share this with someone who needs to understand what real leadership looks like, the kind forged in Harlem streets, not learned in boardrooms. Drop a comment. What does protecting your community mean to you? Let's keep Bumpy's legacy alive. The Godfather of Harlem stood up when everyone else stayed silent.